Dynamic EQ6 is Yamaha's most advanced equalization plug-in yet, and it's new with Rivage PM version 6.6. As you can imagine from its name, Dynamic EQ6 is a 6-band EQ where each band has a range of independent dynamic properties. There's a key input with filter settings, various auto options, and a built-in RTA display, and additional high and low pass filters. Let me talk you through the controls and give you some operational tips. Firstly, let's look at the mounting options. You're likely to want this inserted in an input or output channel. So let's start from the selected channel view. Use any of the 8 available plug-in slots for each channel. Check the insert point with the signal flow screen. You're most likely to be using the Dynamic EQ6 instead of the regular channel EQ, so placing it before the dynamics could make sense. Find all the Dynamic EQ plugins in the EQ section, and note that EQ6 uses a little more processing than the 2-band and the 4-band Dynamic EQs. 5 units of DSP resource means a DSP R10 or DSP RX engine can run up to 72 instances of Dynamic EQ6, which means 144 channels worth of Dynamic EQ. While a more powerful DSP RX EX can run up to 96 instances for 192 channels of processing. So, why would you choose the Dynamic EQ6 rather than the 4 or the 2? Well, for its versatility. It doesn't only have 2 extra bands, but it's kind of like a one-stop shop for all your EQ needs. You can use it to draw your usual type of EQ curves and then add a dynamic element to each band as and when required. Use a key in for any of the bands and add a filter to that if you wish. I'll talk you through all the controls, starting with the dual mono version of the plugin, because the stereo version has some extra tricks which I'll show you later. When you first open the plugin, you'll see the controls for EQ band 1. Scroll between the bands using the tabs on the right, or touch the colored dot in the graph, or use screen encoder number 10 to select another band. Notice that each band is a bell shape by default, though any band can be turned into a low or high shelf. If you limit yourself to the frequency, Q, and gain parameters, it will operate just like a regular parametric EQ. In a similar way to the precise EQ in the channel strips, the Q parameter is available on a shelf to vary the slope or overshoot. Touch the HP LP tab to access the high pass and low pass filters. These are not dynamic at all, but are convenient for quick access without having to exit the plugin. And notice the extra steep slope option available for the LPF, which could be useful for keeping a tidy sound. Back to the colored bands. By adjusting the range and threshold parameters, the EQ starts to become dynamic. As you adjust the range a shaded area appears with the band's color coding. This represents the target EQ curve as the level of the signal deviates from the threshold. You can adjust these by dragging on the screen, by the way. The first time you touch a band, you'll start to drag the range, move it up or down. Then you can adjust the gain separately. Frequency will be adjusted from either the gain or the range marker. Notice that the width of the band cannot be adjusted by pinching like it can on a regular channel EQ. That's to avoid mishitting with adjacent bands. I'll show you another way to adjust the Q in a moment. If you prefer not to have to drag the range before adjusting the gain, it's no problem. There's a setting for that. Open the menu from the 3 lines on the left and disable range priority mode. Now, when you first drag, the gain will be adjusted. If you're going for small gain and range adjustments, the zoom plus and minus controls in the same menu could be useful for more accurate dragging. The next dynamic function to consider is the choice of above or below. Should the EQ range be applied when the signal level is above or below the threshold? This presents us with 4 possible scenarios for each individual band of EQ. Above with a negative range, or above with a positive range. Below with a negative range, and below with a positive range. Let's think of examples for each one. Above with a negative range is probably the most frequently applied and can be typically used as a kind of de-esser and de-pop for vocals. As the selected frequency range increases in level, the EQ curve will cut further. Above with a positive range would apply additional boost to loud signals. It could be used to emphasize forceful snare drum hits without impacting the sound of quieter ghost notes. Below with a negative range will cut low-level signals more than high-level signals. This could be used to reduce the ringing of a tom-tom after it is hit without impacting the transient sound, in cases where a noise gate is not wanted. Below with a positive range is going to boost the band for low-level signals. This can be used to add a kind of loudness curve to instruments when played quietly. Boost the low and high frequencies during quieter moments, or use it to add an artificial proximity effect to a quiet vocal phrase. Once you've decided the type of behavior that you need, it will be time to set the threshold. If you don't have time yet, or the input source isn't ready, switch on auto and come back to fine-tune it later. The ratio Ni can be soft for subtlety, medium, or hard for a more pronounced change. Attack and release can be set to fast, slow, or auto. Or press manual if you have time for more fine adjustments, or if you require some more extreme settings. Now let's talk about the key in. You can choose whether each band is going to use an internal or external key in. Only one external key in can be used per EQ, though a different filter can be applied to each band. There are a couple of examples where this could be useful. Use a kick drum as the key in for a bass guitar to reduce its low frequencies a little with each hit, without affecting the higher frequencies. Or use a vocal channel as a key in for a piano to boost its mid-frequencies a little when not singing. The choice of key in can be from any input channel or output channel. By default, the key in is filtered with the same center frequency and Q of the EQ band. When you press Q, you can hear the key in the headphones or the Q loudspeakers. The frequency and Q parameters can then be dragged on the screen. Drag up to make it louder in the headphones. This is useful for fine-tuning the parameters to catch the target frequencies. If you want the vertical dragging of the cued filter to affect the actual gain of the EQ band, there's a plug-in preference for that. Touch the three-line box on the left and select Gain Link on Q. Listen. The listen function can be dangerous, so it's disabled by default. Please never touch it during a live performance, as it will silence the input and will output the key signal. So only use it during sound checks. Enable it from the same menu and keep the confirmation message as a safety net. Also, if you're going to use Q or listen, make sure you access the plugin from the selected channel screen, not from the rack menu, to make sure the Q is associated with the correct selected channel to be heard as expected. For even further flexibility, you could add a key filter to any band. That will give you independent adjustment of frequency and Q. So if you wish for a high frequency range to alter the EQ curve of some lower frequencies, you can do that. Perhaps when a ride cymbal is played loudly, you wish for more low-end reinforcement from a double bass, for example. By the way, if you wish to adjust parameters for multiple EQ bands at the same time, use the link function on the left side. That will provide a relative offset for the level-based parameters and an equivalent change up or down for the other parameters like Q and frequency. With gain, all active bands will move in the same direction, while with range, each band will get more or less intense. So far, we have mainly been looking at dual mono plugins. Now let's see a stereo version where we have an intriguing additional option. Once you've selected the above or below mode to suit your need, open the menu and toggle mid-side stereo. Now, 2 additional modes are revealed for each band. Stereo is the default mode which applies the EQ across the whole signal. Mid will apply the EQ to sounds in the center of the stereo image, while side will apply the EQ to the wider parts of the stereo image. Imagine a pair of drum overhead mics. Using mid will apply EQ mainly to the central snare drum sound, while using side will apply EQ mainly to the cymbals on either side. It provides extra scope for creativity and for problem solving. In broadcasting, there may be a presenter mic in the center with ambience and crowd sounds either side. So using some bands for mid and others for side will allow the presenter's voice to be enhanced to increase intelligibility. On top of all those parameters, the RTA with the offset and ballistics, similar to the channel EQ, are visible, and the usual plugin facilities such as the library, copy, paste and compare are all there. Take the time to learn and listen to the Dynamic EQ6, and I'm sure you'll agree that it's our most versatile EQ yet, within the most comprehensive range of plugins available as standard in any digital mixing system. It comes with version 6.6 for Rivage PM series, free to use on all systems of PM10, PM7, PM5 and PM3. I hope you can experience it soon.